In Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, waking up as a giant insect isn't a call to adventure. It's an isolating psychological death. Gregor Samsa doesn't gain the ability to fly. He loses his family, his speech, and his place in the world. Sui Ishida's Tokyo Ghoul follows this exact blueprint. It utilizes the monster trope not for superhero action, but as a lens to examine the total erosion of identity under extreme pressure. The setting is defined by a biological impasse. Humans define justice as the eradication of ghouls, while ghouls, who appear human and possess sentience, are driven by a biological imperative to consume human flesh to survive. Ken Kaneki begins as an innocent bookworm caught in the crossfire. A violent accident and an unethical organ transplant leave him as a human-ghoul hybrid, forcing a boy who loves literature to reconcile with a body that now views his own species as prey. This transformation introduces the black goat's egg, a literary metaphor for the horror of realizing you have inherited a depraved, monstrous nature from a parent figure you never chose. In this story, there is no hero's journey. There is only a fall arc, where survival in a predatory world requires the complete destruction of the original self. Sui Ishida maps this internal decay through hanakotoba, the Japanese language of flowers. Throughout the series, botanical chefs provide a peek into the character's subconscious long before they speak a word of dialogue. In the story's early chapters, Kaneki is closely associated with white carnations. They represent a state of innocence and motherly love, a fragile altruistic shell that he clings to as he resists his new hunger. During his brutal torture, these flowers undergo a visceral change into red spider lilies. These are the flowers of death and lost memories, symbolizing the moment Kaneki accepts his predatory nature and allows his human ego to die. This contrast defines the series' most powerful human investigator, Kisho Arima. He is surrounded by white orchids, symbols of unchanging love and elegance, which frame him as a god of death who views his lethal work with a terrifying, detached beauty. By utilizing this botanical shorthand, Ishida demonstrates that in a world this cruel, psychological death is a prerequisite for physical survival. This sense of predestination is reinforced by numbers woven directly into the character art, corresponding to specific cards in the tarot. The number 12 appears hidden in the shading of Kaneki's neck during his most traumatic transitions. This identifies him with the Hanged Man. The card signifies a state of suspension and ultimate sacrifice. For Kaneki, it marks his role as a character trapped between two worlds, unable to move forward without surrendering a part of his humanity. Conversely, Arima's introduction is marked by the number 7, the Chariot. It denotes a character defined by absolute discipline and victory through willpower, establishing him as an invincible force before he ever draws a weapon. These symbols act as a fatalistic blueprint. They establish the characters as players in a tragedy where their roles were assigned long before the first chapter began. Beneath the floral and tarot symbolism lies a deeper framework rooted in Jungian psychology. The story treats the monster not as an external threat, but as a part of the self that must be integrated. Kaneki's hallucinations of Rize, the ghoul who made him, represent his shadow and anima, the repressed desires and capacity for violence that he feared to acknowledge as a human. To survive his torture, Kaneki is forced to stop viewing these traits as an external parasite. He must integrate the shadow, accepting that his capacity for violence is an inseparable part of who he has become. Toka Kirishima serves as the narrative mirror to this process. While Kaneki hardens his shell to protect others, Toka begins as a rage-filled monster and slowly softens, attempting to build a human life despite her predatory nature. Through these two paths, Ishida suggests that while ghouls are bound by a biological need to hunt, the true monstrosity on both sides, the cruelty and the loss of empathy, is a psychological scar carved by the trauma of their world. The tragedy culminates in Kaneki's failed attempt to act as a bridge between two species that are biologically incompatible. His altruism is unable to overcome a system built on mutual predation. This leads to his final Kafkaesque evolution, the dragon. It is a massive, mutated biological mass that represents the total shedding of his individual ego to become a common enemy for all of Tokyo. This is the visual manifestation of the birdcage, the inescapable cycle of systemic oppression and biological necessity. Here, retaliatory violence is the only currency. A kill creates a debt of revenge, repaid by the other side, reinforcing the cage with every drop of blood. By the end, Kaneki reaches a melancholic realization. The world isn't wrong, it just is. In a universe defined by this birdcage, there is no such thing as a pure altruistic victory. Survival is not won by being a hero, but by enduring the suffering the world demands. Ultimately, finding meaning in this absurd reality comes from accepting the monster within and choosing to hold on to fleeting human connections despite the crushing cruelty of the cage.